All right, so the first one is from Alex. Alex says, "Hey Bradley, could you talk about when we should be using CTR campaigns and if that's still worth doing?" Well, it can be if done properly. Um, but the problem is that I still see a lot of people doing CTR incorrectly, and not only that, but Google has gotten a hell of a lot better at determining or validating traffic sources. In other words, Google is looking at the profile that is doing the search and click signals, right, to determine if it's relevant. Google can do that very quickly now. Like, in other words, there are signals that help to tell Google or help Google determine how much value to assign to those search and click signals or the engagement signals, period. Right. So, in other words, remember, guys, as we interact online, there is a profile. Anytime you click one of those cookie consent pop-ups that show up on every goddamn website in the world now that says you agree to the cookies or you can manage the cookies by selecting which cookies are you're allowing them to insert into your browser and all of that kind of stuff. Most people just accept all, which is giving permission for all the data that website is collecting to be shared with any number of third-party platforms that they see fit. So the point that I'm trying to make is when you're traveling around the web and engaging with content and doing searches, and when you're literally going and visiting physical locations, if you have a Google on your phone, that so Google is tracking where you're going, the places you're visiting physically, not just on the web, but where you're literally traveling to, the stores that you frequent, the places that you visit, the content that you engage with, the searches that you perform online. Everything is being tracked. When you click that accept all cookie consent thing on websites, you're then telling the websites that they can collect all the data that's currently already publicly available, as well as any data that they collect while you're on their site can be shared as well, right? As long, if you again, so the point is there's a massive amount of data that is being accrued for each one of us as a user profile, so to speak. And so when we engage with stuff, that signal is weighted significantly heavier than some random bot out there that has some crazy sporadic history with no location history of being physically located in that area. Right? We can spoof things with proxies and browser geolocators and everything else, but it's very difficult to spoof or to manufacture or to fake history, right? And whether it's a real profile or not. And so CTR can be effective if it's done properly and if it's not overdone, which I see a lot of people still do, which is why I don't recommend setting up CTR campaigns manually. There's a number, if you're going to use a CTR app, there's a number of apps out there that will integrate with things like Search Console, which have their own kind of algorithms that will auto optimize the signal volume. In other words, the quantity of signals that are sent based upon where the particular page URLs are in the search results, how many impressions they get, what their current positioning is, etc. And it kind of modifies all of those the formula for the search queries, the number of click signals it's going to send, everything based around like its current positioning. That way, it doesn't appear to be manufactured traffic signals. Manufactured traffic, which Google's getting so much better at being able to determine that. If you are overdoing it and you're sending unnatural signals from unvalidated or unverified traffic sources, that is a clear signal that you are trying to manipulate search performance by manipulating click-through rate and engagement signals. And so it's very important that if you're going to do CTR, that you are, number one, either extremely conservative with it, and number two, that you are also, not overdoing it. And that's why I don't recommend setting them up manually. If you're going to do CTR, use an app that has its own algorithm for auto optimizing the campaign, because those are typically dialed in to where they aren't going to be risky. But in any case, anytime you're using a CTR manipulation app, it is a risky exercise, because here's an example. This was a post published by Joy Hawkins just recently, like within just the last week or two, because I saw it come through as a blog post. And I found it on X right now I'll share this link in chat, guys. I don't know if this is going to matter to you guys, but she does have an article published on the blog somewhere. I think it's maybe it's the Sterling Sky blog or whatever it is. That's the same article as this one. I just found it on X when I did a quick search because I saw this question before I started Hump Day Hangout. So I wanted to pull it up. And this is where her and some others have done some testing on CTR stuff, and it can cause problems. It can cause significant problems if you overdo it. And again, most CTR apps are using unvalidated or unverified traffic sources don't have any actual relevance, like profile history that would indicate to Google that they are actually interested in those products or services or those topics, that content, etc., or that they have, especially for local SEO, any relation to that geographic area, right? And so again, we can spoof some of these metrics, like you can geolocate a browser, and you can use a mobile proxy, which kind of eliminates the necessity of having the cell signal or phone service or whatever originate from that location. Because remember, with mobile, you can be pinging off of a tower that's way, way far away. But you can geolocate the browser to simulate a search from a particular location. But what about the profile history of the bot that is clicking through that proxy through a geolocated browser? What is the profile history of that bot? Does it have any kind of cookie history of sites that would be relevant to the topic that it's now clicking on? Does it have any location history of physically visiting locations within that same general physical area? Right? These are all questions that there's a clear no to. You can't, like, unless you have an app where you are developing profiles like Google user profiles that then live in a particular city and have waking hours and sleeping hours and engage with content and physical locations, etc., within that same kind of general physical area, all of that stuff, then those links, that type of CTR activity can be um, given more weight, more credit, more value, right? But that's difficult to do. Ask me how we know. We've been at that for about 2.5, 3 years, and it's incredibly expensive to build those kind of profiles and to maintain them. It's very, very difficult. So anyway, like I said, do I use CTRs? Is it still worth doing? Yes, I do. And I use kind of profiles that we've built up when it's a business with a published street address. I found that obviously the kind of navigation signals, not to driving directions, but actually using the navigation, Google Maps navigation, that helps to perform well again, especially if it's coming from what Google considers to be a verified Google user profile in the same location or area of the business that it's engaging with. If that makes sense. That is a much heavier weighted type of engagement signal than one that's coming through some random bot that has no history that would make it valid and relevant, if that makes clear, if that's clear. So the point that I'm trying to make is I still do some CTR stuff. If depending on whether it's a published street address or not with the GBP will depend on which types of CTR I will use. If I'm going to do a CTR campaign with using the bot or the apps, not the types of profiles that myself and my partners have created, then I will use something like SERP Empire or something that will auto optimize the campaign. But I always wanted to make sure that we're being extremely conservative. And if you're going to be doing CTR, the most important thing, in my opinion, are brand search queries, branded search and click queries or signals, which those are the most important, not keywords. If you want to start pushing on keywords with CTR, you append or modify the brand search to include a keyword, right? So that's what I call a compound query or a compound anchor when you're building links, which is a brand plus, meaning brand plus a location modifier or brand plus a product or service keyword, something like that. But again, you should be focusing almost entirely on branded signals, not keyword signals, guys. Okay. But in any case, like I said, verified Google traffic or validated traffic sources is going to be the better way to do it. And Google is continually evolving and getting better at determining what is spoofed traffic and signals versus what is real. Okay. Anyway, good question. Moving on.